and welcome to Beebe Book Buzz, the program where your friendly librarians talk about what we've been reading lately so that you can find your next great read. My name's Karen Stern, and I'm here with my colleagues Katie Riordan and Jackie Powers, and we are going to talk today. We have more nonfiction today than I think we've ever had on any one program. And I'm going to start with, because mine is the deepest, darkest, grittiest one, and so we're going to go with that first. Looking at the title, which is Say Nothing, as a true story of murder and memory in Northern Ireland, you could be forgiven for thinking this was either maybe a mystery or a piece of true crime. And really, Patrick Radden Keefe, the author, sets it up to be kind of all of those things. But it is also, and kind of primarily, a deep dive into the history and the inner workings of the IRA, the Irish Republican Army, which, as most of us probably know, is the one of the major players in what is known as the Troubles, which is the conflict over Irish sovereignty, which has pitted Catholics and Protestants in Ireland against each other for, well, in this current iteration, for about 100 years. As you can imagine, it's a hugely complicated subject. There are zero areas of black and white here. That's all many deep and light shades of gray. I mean, it's just really complex. For instance, what do you call people who have been fighting each other in a country where at least half the population believes they considers themselves to be occupied by an invading force, by the English, for close to now 1,000 years. 1171 was the first. So this is a really long time that people have had this in their culture. So what do you call people who are fighting in that? Are they freedom fighters? Are they soldiers in a civil war? Are they terrorists? And so Keefe tries to get at some of those nuances by starting from the inside. He starts from the ground up with some of the real people who actually, are involved in this. And he starts with Jean McConville, and she was a mother of 10. At the time of the starting of the book, she's a widowed mother of 10. She and her husband were a Catholic. They were a mixed marriage, a Catholic-Protestant marriage, who were not particularly welcome in any of the communities that they lived in because of this, because it was like a taboo at the time. Maybe still is in certain situations. And one night, in front of all her children, she was abducted by a gang of people that she knew, her neighbors, in front of all of her children, in front of all but one of her children. Yeah. So, and was never seen again. And so the mystery of what happened to Jean McConville is part of the thread of this, one of the threads of this book. Then we're also introduced to Dolores and Marion Price, who were two Catholic sisters from a family with long-standing Republican ties. So that's who believe that Ireland should be its own republic, separate from Britain. The sisters, starting from when they were kind of barely out of their teens, were involved in bombings, disappearances. They were jailed. They were early hunger strikers. There was a big conflict, a big sort of controversy over them being force-fed when they were on hunger strike. And so he's telling their stories in their own words in many cases, and he's telling backstories of famous bombings, famous killings, famous disappearances, things that you may or may not have heard of in the press, right? But he's telling it from their point of view. And as he's doing that, in the second section of the book, he is giving you those inner workings. He's weaving in people that you've heard of: Jerry Adams, Brendan Hughes. He talks about Bobby Sands, who was the first hunger striker to die, and all of those tales are interwoven. Meanwhile, Jean McConville's story keeps coming back up. So you've got these threads that are woven through the story with a whole lot of detail and many, many names and all kinds of incidents that are coming up. But those three threads kind of take you through the book. and you're constantly, the family of Jean McConville is trying to figure out what happened to her, and they're not getting much joy, and it's talking about how their lives have been torn apart by being, not knowing what happened to their mother. So that's the first 2 sections of the book, and then there's the third section, and just as you're kind of wondering, like, how does he know all this stuff, and how did he get all this incredible information, and why is there a section of notes at the back that's this thick, which I was listening to it, it was a good listen, but I didn't read all the notes because I was listening. And then the third section is about the Boston Project, which you probably have heard of. It came to light, about 10 years ago? And Katie's nodding vigorously. Yeah. She's read this book like 4 times or something. Yeah. And it was basically conceived by people at Boston College as a secret cache of interviews that would be kept secret. The people who were interviewed, including Dolores Price, including Brendan Hughes, some major players, also some minor ones, were guaranteed secrecy because of this culture of say nothing, where you're not allowed to, if you speak, you're dead, essentially, or at the very, very best, you might be exiled forever. People held these stories. No one knew really what was happening until this project happened, and they were guaranteed that their stories would be kept until they had died.
The last person had died.
Until the last person had died. Yeah. Only that's not what happened. Mm-hmm. And they didn't really put the planning for it was not so great, and they didn't really put a lot of the legal protections in place that they needed to keep that, and maybe didn't think through the fact that not everybody was going to die at once.
Yeah. No. They weren't telling their stories in a bubble. Right?
Yeah, they weren't. Yes, their stories have lots of knock-on effects. So there was quite a bit of controversy when it came out, and then indeed they did get subpoenaed by the U.S. government, and then on behalf of the British government, and so there was a lot of fallout from that. But it also allowed people like Keefe to have access to these things and other interviews, and which is where he gets a lot of his information and how he can know the story. So it's all very interesting. It's all very detailed. I think, in essence, the title says almost all you need to know about this book. Because of this culture of silence, it led to the culture of retribution. If you were a tout, which is, if you talked, you were dead. There were all kinds of double and triple agents. There's all kinds of things going. So there's that side of things that keeps the story moving along. But it is also, as he says in the title, about memory. He starts the book with a quote: "All wars are fought twice. The first time on the battlefield, the second time in memory." That's actually from Viet Thanh Nguyen, who's a Vietnamese author. And I think this book is a lot about how those memories can become distorted and overwritten by emotions and time, and how toxic they become when held inside, when you're forced to say nothing, and how they affected the people who were involved in these things. So there's all of that going on in this book, which he does very well. I talked about this with my book group last night, and there was a mixture of responses. It's very journalistic. I mean, even though he's talking about very personal things, it's still a very journalistic style. So if you're looking for it's not quite the Eric Larsons, the David Grands, the people that tell that amazing narrative nonfiction in that way that you just can't. But I mean, I would say more than half the group adored it, thought it was amazing, and learned a lot from it. The part of the reason I was talking about it today is because there's a Hulu series that just came out last week. Yeah. And it is, if this feels like too much, if you don't want to read all the notes and all that sort of stuff, the Hulu series is also supposed to be very good. So one way or another, I would highly recommend getting to know Say Nothing by Patrick Radden Keefe.
That's awesome.
It's kind of wild how that culture of secrecy is still not now in my neighborhood. I live in Charlestown, but when my husband was growing up in the 80s, and even though some part of the 90s, you didn't talk there. You did not talk. I mean, people were there was a lot of racketeering, and there was this was kind of Whitey Bulger era.
Yeah.
And you didn't talk to the police. It was not done.
But you talk to your family line. It's all oral history going down.
Yes. So the sisters were well and truly immersed in in what their family had done in the Troubles, all through the years.
It's
And
their version
that's-
of an echo chamber.
Mhm.
Like, and
Yeah.
like if you don't
Yeah.
hear the other side story, which is why I think this is such a cool book, because you do see,
You're hearing everybody's.
yes,
Yeah.
Yeah.
which is really interesting.
I mean, you don't get a lot of the Protestant side of things.
Yeah.
But it's very informative about how that system
Yeah.
or works or doesn't work. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
he's very good and very even-handed in a way. Like, maybe even-handed isn't the right word in this situation, but he's very he doesn't
Neutral, kind of.
He's neutral. He doesn't put himself in there. He
Yeah.
just uses their words to
Yeah.
let you see the situation. So from that point of view, it's really interesting.
Mm.
But yeah, so
I thought it was very. I also think that in the beginning, I didn't know who did what to the original person. You know,
right.
so I think that's really cool.
That's true.
Yeah.
The murder mystery part of it is it takes you through a lot of twists and turns, and you keep kind of thinking, oh, maybe we're about
Is it
to find
resolved? I mean, is it or not really?
out. It is resolved. Yes. I mean, and officially, I'm not sure that it has like ever been legally resolved, but he
Gets
pretty
to the
much
bottom of
gets
it.
to
Yeah.
the bottom of it. Yeah.
Mm.
And it is surprising.
Yeah.
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 So
Yeah.
we're going to move on to fiction.
Fiction.
A break from our
Entry.
nonfiction.
Yeah. I'm going to talk about All Adults Here by Emma Straub. It's a wonderful family saga. It's a little bit lighter than that book, but still a little,
Just a tiny
just
bit.
a tiny bit. It's about a small town, and it's like any small town you've seen in any Hallmark series. Every single person knows everybody, and they've known each other for 40 years, so that type of thing. It starts out with the matriarch of a family who has 3 children and 1 grandchild. So you know that going in. And she sees like a violent act towards an acquaintance that she's known for years. So she gets immediately hit by a bus in like the first couple minutes. And that just sends her into a spiral. It sends the main character, Astrid, into, she doesn't know what she wants to do with her life. She starts doing a midlife crisis way late. So it took a very surprising turn for me, and then she just immediately turns and decides to start telling her whole family that she's in love with someone, you know, and that she wants to start a new life, you know. So I think the best way to look at this is you see many points of views, and you see so many people having their own coming of age moment from different ages.
Okay.
And so
But these are all members of the same family?
all members of the same family.
Okay,
Many
got it.
different points of views, many different people dealing with their own individual struggle, and it ranges from like a high schooler to a 65-year-old woman. It's very much coming of age without actually having to come of age.
Right.
Yeah.
For people who sort of already gotten there.
Yeah, people have already gotten there, but it's super messy. It's super it's just really, really fun and really, really flawed individuals trying to make their way together type
Okay.
of thing.
All right.
So I would say if you're really, really interested in, especially around Thanksgiving, seeing a family that's a little messier than yours, choose this one. Yeah.
She's good at that. I feel like she does
Yeah.
complicated characters. I feel like her other books, I can't remember which one it was. I think there was a ballet. Was somebody in ballet?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think Vacationers.
Was
Yeah.
that? Yeah,
I think so.
She does that kind of. You vacillate between liking the character
Yeah.
and not, and then I still feel like even if you don't end up liking them, you feel for them. You kind of understand them a little.
Yeah, it's
Like,
all personal journeys, and you keep seeing them struggle each second.
Yeah.
Right.
And then you just want them
And
to
they
make the
evolve.
right. Yeah, they evolve really well.
And so what's the writing style like? Is it a lighter touch, or is it kind
It's
of
super light. It goes really, really fast too. It's a super fast read. I definitely think that this is one of those stories where once you pick it up, you need to know what happens in the next chapter, so you'll finish it.
it's a
and
page turner?
Yeah.
Okay, an emotional page turner.
emotional page
Right,
journal,
okay.
and you never really know how it's going to get resolved because all these issues are so like intricate and tiny, but also huge.
Right, for the person involved, they're massive.
They're very
right.
internal.
Very
It's not-
internal.
like she does. There's
Yeah.
not a lot of like action necessarily,
No.
right?
Definitely
yeah.
not a
This
lot
is
of
not
action.
for your James Patterson people.
No. No, but it's definitely for your drama lovers because again, everyone knows everybody, and
Right.
there's generations down.
Right.
And the drama between the parents does fall down towards the children and the grandchildren in this story.
Right.
So
okay.
that's a really fun thing.
Which is life.
Yeah, which is life. Yeah, so it's really fun, and they all deal with huge issues while dealing with it on a small stage.
Yep.
You know, so like I would say definitely pick it up if you want to see families grow to love each other again. You know.
Right. Does
and get
sound
to
like
know
a good
each other.
Thanksgiving book.
Yeah, a really good Thanksgiving book. I
Perfect.
definitely would say another book that you should read is Pineapple Street by Jenny Jackson, where you
Same.
just see
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Dysfunctional family.
Dysfunctional
Yeah.
family.
Hello
Yeah.
Beautiful might be
Yeah.
another one.
Yeah.
Recent one that's been kind of along those lines.
But you definitely leave feeling satisfied after reading this. Like,
Okay.
it's definitely not something where you're like, oh, I don't know what happened to them. You're like, oh,
Okay.
I'm so glad they grew.
Whether it's not always entirely resolved, but
Yeah.
you feel like they're getting to a good place.
It's
Exactly.
a satisfying ending
Yep.
rather
Yeah.
than but not necessarily tied up with a bow.
No, they fall apart, but then they come back together.
Okay.
Together. So
All
that's
right.
like
And
the
it's
best thing about
always
this.
different when that happens. It's
Yeah.
never the same again. But
No.
it's
Yeah. And
Okay.
it's just I love the book. I thought it was really, really great. And I just
How
can't get
fast did you read it?
I think I read it in maybe 3 hours.
Wow,
Yeah.
Katie.
I was on
3
a
hours
plane.
to
I was
read
on a
it?
plane.
Oh,
It's
okay.
fine.
Oh, it was on
Yeah.
a plane. Oh, perfect.
Yeah,
So
it's a good plane read.
book. There you
Yeah,
go. All right.
definitely.
All
So-
right.
It's always nice when you can finish something like neatly in a flight.
Yes,
Like-
exactly. It's perfect, and you can just
Wow.
close it and move on. Yeah,
That's impressive.
it's pretty good.
I don't think I could read any book in 3 hours, honestly. Maybe I just don't have the stamina.
She also has
pick
written a
longer
lot of
books.
other books too. So if
Yes,
you like her writing
if you like
style,
Emma Straub, there's
Yeah.
plenty out there to choose from.
yeah, very comical too. Very
Yep.
funny. You got to do it. You just
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, and Jackie.
We're going to go back to nonfiction.
Well, but it's
Woohoo.
memoirs. That's
It's
different.
memoirs.
It's more. It's somewhere between. Well, it's not between anything, but I mean, it's like it's closer to maybe
Yeah,
the
It's a
fiction.
little closer.
Yeah.
So I don't have a book. I have my iPad because the reason I picked these was because I listened to them. So it's the holidays. If you are traveling, if you're
Yeah.
going to be in a car for a long time or on a plane, it's a great time to dabble in an audiobook.
Absolutely.
And I'm very particular about what I listen to. I commute, so I listen to stuff all the time, but I don't listen to a lot of fiction. I find that nonfiction is a little easier to listen to because if you get distracted in traffic for a minute, like you haven't missed a pivotal plot point or anything.
very
It's
fair.
not.
Yeah.
It's not. It
Or a
tends to not be as
described.
critical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something
Yeah,
beautifully
like you
described
missed
or whatever.
somebody,
Yeah.
some key
You
detail.
don't miss a stop
do-
sign because a dragon came in. And,
Yeah,
that
I
happens
I
to
do
me.
have two exceptions, or a couple exceptions for fiction, but mostly I like nonfiction. And lately I happen to just do 2 memoirs in a row, and they are wildly, wildly different. They possibly could not be more so. But so the first one was, the title is, and I won't say it, CAT, don't worry. It's Leslie Effing Jones. And so, as you can imagine from the title, this one is not safe for work or like the car if your children are there. But she's a comedian. Leslie Jones is a comedian. She used to be on SNL. She
Yeah.
was on there for 5 years. She was a cast member. She swears a lot in this book. If you are, I'm not bothered by this at all, but if you are, this is not the book for you. But all that said, she is hilarious. She is so funny. She has lived a life. I mean, I think she's at this point in her like mid to late 50s. She was, I think, the oldest cast member
She was
ever
40.
joined. She was older than 40, I think.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I think she was like 46 or
my
45.
goodness,
Yeah,
that's
she was
so cool.
She was very
for her.
like
Yeah.
I mean, comparatively,
Yeah.
significantly older than like the rest of the cast.
She started at the same time as Pete Davidson, who was the youngest.
Who was the youngest, yes.
So
Right.
That's kind of fun.
So she was born in the South. Her father was in the military, so she lived like in Georgia and Tennessee, and then I think in her kind of like early teens, they moved to Compton, and then so she's gone from the South to Compton to then she lived. She went back and forth between L.A. and New York City for like most of her adult life, and was in New York a lot. So she's been there and back. She's seen it all. She has a lot of interjections where she'll say real talk. Like she'll tell you what to do. And she's very honest. She's very introspective. She's very thoughtful about and kind of like, you know, I made a bunch of mistakes. Like I didn't know what I was doing. Like this was dumb. But she's also very proud of her extremely hard-won success. I mean, she worked really, had kind of got past the point that I think a lot of people would have given up.
Yeah.
And she
Yeah.
really didn't.
It's amazing.
The best part of the audio of this is I think I realized about a third of the way through that she was not even remotely reading the book.
Oh, wow.
Like
Oh.
she is fully just talking. And so I always meant to go find, and I just haven't, like an actual physical copy of the book
Yeah.
to see how different it is.
Wow.
She is just talking.
So she's kind of doing stand up on in
She
your ear.
kind of is. I mean, she is telling the story, and she presumably has like the book in front of her, but she digresses all the time. And then there's one part she's like, this isn't even in the book, and they told me to leave it out, but I'm just going to tell you anyway. So like, it feels it's very natural and like kind of unedited because like she's really just talking, and it's so I mean, it's in her voice because she's obviously it's in her voice, but it's not the, how you write differently than you speak.
Yeah.
Right. So this is not her reading this book. This is her telling you the story. And I'm guessing the book is not quite as heavy on the swears, but
Sure. Probably.
But delightful. Just like, she's a very interesting person.
Very cool.
Has had did not have an easy life, but is not is just kind of like, well,
right.
That's the lot I have and the lot I chose, and I don't know. It's she's a really interesting person, and I think will continue to be. She did a lot with the Olympics. She was like a commentator in the Olympics, and
that was really cool.
Great. She's very smart.
Yeah.
So that was Leslie, and then I had a couple weeks break, and then I started reading Ina Garten's new memoir, which so it's also in her voice, but it's her voice reading, so it is different. Yeah, like that, just generally. So that's Food Network star Ina Garten, the Barefoot Contessa.
Beautiful.
Her book is called Be Ready When the Luck Happens, which I really
that's a great title.
Loved as a title. Yeah. And that's her life. Like that, it's not that she didn't work hard for her success. She has worked really hard in her life, but she also was very open to new things, to learning new things, to trying new things. She recognized that she gets bored easily and knows when to walk away from something. So her book is amazing. It's just as delightful as she is on TV. That comes across. She's very warm. She's very self-deprecating. She's very aware of how lucky she's been. I think when you're listening, you're surprised by how kind of unexpectedly strong-willed and like sometimes kind of rebellious she is. Like you see her and she's just like smiley and and like cute for a little like a person, like I don't know, for a person in her 70s, like she's like adorable.
Yeah.
But there's a lot more backbone to her than I think is immediately apparent. She's open to things, but she at the same time wants to do things her way.
Will of Iron.
Yes, very kind of like it almost made me think she would be like one of those Southern people that are like kind of Dixie Carter-esque, like very nice, very polite, very warm, but like don't get in her way.
Right.
And I think it's not quite that far. I think she's very quietly strong. She had a very difficult childhood. Sounded horrible actually. And then she does tell you about that, but then she really quickly like kind of leaves that behind and moves on to the relationship with her husband and like their kind of journey together.
They sound great. Yeah.
They're lovely. But even their relationship wasn't perfect. And like, because whose is? But so she's 76 now, and you're like, I was listening to it and I'm thinking she's going to do something else, right?
Yeah.
Like she's got to.
She's 76. I didn't realize she was that old. Okay.
Yeah. And I was like, she must color her hair, but it doesn't look it doesn't look like unnatural. She's aged she's very, I heard an interview with her with Julia Louis-Dreyfus's podcast. And she's very comfortable with who she is. And she found a thing, like her style is very kind of not that interesting, but very distinct.
Oh, yes.
Like she usually has a scarf and like
you could wear it as a Halloween
shirt,
costume.
And everyone would know. And it's not like the pieces aren't especially.
She wears a scarf today.
She wears a scarf like this, and then she.
Just as you're.
And like a dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up. Like it's all very simple, but it's her, and she's like, it works for me, and that's what I do. Right.
That's amazing.
Know yourself. It's a really, really good one to live by.
It's a good one. But this was like kind of the audiobook I needed.
Yeah.
No, it's just she's very soothing.
That's
and
awesome.
you know, she's the kind of person you're like, let's just make a batch of muffins and we're all going to be fine.
I love
like
that.
she just sort of makes you feel sort of warm, which is her goal. Like it's very intentional.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like a good blend of those two books would definitely be Kelly Bishop's new memoir that has like the third Gilmore, where it's she talks about her time on Broadway and her time in New York and leading up all the way into from when she was on Company, I think, or one of the first shows about her time on Broadway, and then up until now.
Yeah, that would be a nice
Little
bridge.
blend. Yeah.
And then there's also the other memoir that we were just looking at putting out, which was
Jenny Slate.
Jenny Slate.
Oh,
Life Forms.
yes, I want to
Yeah.
read that. I love Jenny.
You talked Little Weirds
Yes,
a few
couple
years
years
back.
ago.
Yep. When it came out, and then so this is a similar one with it's a series
Since
of essays.
she started a family.
Yeah, exactly, and it's called Life Form, which obviously is an homage
She's a
to her.
really interesting writer.
She's an interesting writer. I heard her on the radio too, and she sounds really cool. She deals with the anxiety of the age. I know. I think she talks a lot about that. I think she did that in Little Weirds as well. But this is now she's a parent. It's a different type, and but she's also gotten over some of the ones from the book before. So it's kind of a progression.
New anxieties.
Yeah, exactly.
There's always a new one.
There's always a new one.
Yeah.
But anyway, so there's a lot of good memoirs, a lot of good ones to listen to. Probably, I think any of these would probably be good to listen to.
People really live lives out there.
Yeah,
They do.
Yeah.
They do.
great.
Mine would be boring.
No.
no one wants to hear our
But
the Secret Lives of Librarians. Maybe we could make
Those
one.
do. That's a James Patterson book right now. Like,
we'd have to embellish. I think. I don't know that we.
Oh, I don't know. Do we? Anyway, we won't go there. But anyway, I think we're done. Anybody have anything else to add?
No.
I was just going to add, there are
sorry.
2 fiction books that I exclusively listen to, and this is only if you have significant time to kill.
Yeah.
But I exclusively listen to Robert Galbraith's, J.K. Rowling's, Cormoran Strike series.
Yes.
They are 30 plus hours long because her
Right.
books are like 800 pages. Wonderfully performed. Also, Kate Atkinson, who has a new Jackson Brody out. I've only listened to those.
And have you listened to the new one?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
I enjoyed it, but it's a character study. That's all it is.
Yeah.
There's not a lot in the way of plot.
Okay.
But I like the listen. Like the reader does a good job.
Okay.
And it was enough for me. I think it will not be enough.
I started reading it. I didn't listen. I started reading it, and I wasn't.
I have
grabbed.
not. I have read the first one of those and did not enjoy it, and listened to all the rest and liked them so much better.
That's what I would also say. This book, I tried listening to it, and there's too many characters.
Right.
So you need to. Some books like this that have like very different points of views.
Yeah.
And different. You need to see.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
need to read
No,
it.
it's funny.
Yeah.
Talk about that. I listened to this one, and characters is not even the word for it. I mean, there's just so many names that comes across in this.
And that spans like 60 years, right?
Yeah.
80s, and like
Yeah. But I will say, the actor or the voice actor is an Irish actor, and that does lend something to
character.
it. It really does. I mean, he's reading. I mean, Patrick Radden Keefe is actually he's American, but he's half Irish and half Australian. So his voice probably doesn't sound anything like the guy that read it, but I did enjoy hearing it in the Irish.
Well, these are both British,
right?
And they're like a British.
He also wrote another really good book called Rogues, which is really good.
Rogues, and also Patrick Radden Keefe also wrote the one about the drug about Empire of Pain. I think that's what it's called. Empire of Pain.
The drug industry.
About
right?
it's about the drug industry.
I don't think I realized that was him.
Yeah, that's him. And apparently that is somebody in the book club last night was saying that was
He's really good at investigative writing.
really good. Yeah. So if you like that journalistic style of nonfiction, Patrick Radden Keefe is definitely a good one.
Yeah. Yeah. Rogues is about the criminal underground, which is kind of fun.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
All right.
He writes complicated characters well.
Yep. Yeah, he does.
I
Okay.
think we had a nice range there.
We did. Yeah. We got in. It's gonna be lots for the read alike page.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. We're gonna finish there, and we will see you next month. No, we won't. We will see you in the new year. So for now, for 2024, this is Beebe Book Buzz signing off. Thanks.